Good afternoon, live from Toronto on the GBKM network. This is the Chat Up Show, the show where we chat about any and everything to do with popular culture. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aloydi, and I hope that you are ready to chat it up with me today. Now, as always, remember you can keep up with the GBKM network in various ways. You can watch and listen live at www.gbkm.fm or www.gbkm.tv, where you can also join in the conversation by liking, sharing, and commenting. You can also continue to watch us live on Facebook at GBKM Television and YouTube at GBKM TV, where as always, you can continue to join in the conversation there as well by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Instagram at GBKMFM and Twitter at GBKM_FM. We'd also like to say a big thank you to our Chat Up Show sponsors, Coded Signature, which is a Nigerian-owned local brand that specializes in Afrocentric apparel and accessories, where they have intertwined African history into the beautiful clothes and this lovely hat, which features an emblem of Queen Idia of Benin. Love this, love the detailing, and very special about these hats as well on their website that you can check out at codedsignature.com, that's coded with a K, where there are backless satin-lined hats as well for all of us that want to take care of our curls and our lovely crown. Okay, all you need to do is get yourself a satin-lined cap just like this one, comes in different colors, and comes backless too. So if you're letting that puff go and you're rocking that fro, do not worry, this hat has enough space and room for you. So you can check that all out at codedsignature.com. Again, that's coded with a K, where you can also get a 10% discount at checkout using the code GBKM. Yes, you heard that right. There's a very special treat in it for you. You can get a 10% discount at checkout using the code GBKM. And to follow up with Coded Signature, again, you can check out their website, that's codedsignature.com. You can check out their Facebook or Instagram, that's Coded Signature as well. Remember, it's coded with a K. So you can pick up your very own Queen Idia hat or some great Afrocentric apparel too. And tip as well, they do deliver worldwide, so don't worry about location, they got you, okay? Now, these past 2 weeks have been rather eventful, especially for us Nigerians that have been watching around the world, watching the End SARS protests unfold, develop, spread around the country and even around the world. We're seeing more people hosting and starting their own protests in various countries in the UK, in the US, even here in Canada, across the diaspora. We're seeing more of these marches and protests pop up. Now, some of us may have also attended some of these protests, myself included, in marches around the world to show solidarity for those at home who are fighting for the end to police brutality, also, which has been coined as now the movement for End SARS. But it's important to note that it's not just about ending SARS, that there's something here that is sparked amongst the youth in Nigeria that we're seeing across social media. And even when you go out to these protests and you're hearing people speak, it's much more than just ending SARS. There's a change that a lot of people are really looking towards, hoping that these protests, these marches will spark that change. And ever since the events of last week at the Lekki Tollgate Plaza, there have been a lot of people who are wanting and demanding for that change to happen now. And with the week's events unfolding before our eyes, even more people are getting upset and tired of our government. As a Nigerian myself, watching it and seeing what's happened, especially with the recent lootings, as they've been called, of the warehouses where COVID provisions were kept. There's a lot to be said about how our citizens see our government and how our government even treats and sees our citizens just in the last 2 weeks alone. And heck, even across this whole month. This is the same month that Nigeria turned 60, and it's both hopeful and inspiring that people are taking it within their hands to actually make the changes that they want to see in that country. It's also sad that it's 60 years and we still are fighting for the same thing. We're fighting for recognition from our government. We're fighting for the government to step in and actually take control and take charge and ensure that citizens are well taken care of, that they don't have to worry about making ends meet, especially during this pandemic, that they didn't have to worry about feeding their families, that there was a competent government in place that would ensure that they didn't have to worry about those things. But from what we've seen this last week alone, something's lacking, something's missing. The fact that the government can even share those provisions just yet, that they were being held up in warehouses across the country, and it took citizens breaking in to finally essentially spread the news that this was available to us. Those of us who are looking at how other governments around the world were aiding their citizens. I mean, here in Canada, there was a lot of conversation about the CERB that was being shared for those who were heavily impacted by the pandemic, by COVID, and by the lockdown, that the government was able to step in and help ensure that people were able to pay their bills, feed their families. And it seems that the Nigerian government essentially just left the citizens to fend for themselves and figure things out in a very uncertain time, in times that we were unprecedented. We're still trying to figure it out, and we're still not sure where it's going to go. Now, before we get into that conversation, I do want to give us our quick update, especially for us Ontarians. And even around the world, we're seeing COVID cases continue to rise, which only goes to show that, as much as we wished we weren't in lockdown anymore, as much as we wish life could return back to normal, things really haven't returned back to normal. And as long as we keep essentially living in delusion that it will, then we might have to keep dealing with COVID-19. But once we get the idea and get it clear that unless we're doing what we need to do, unless we're ensuring that we're keeping our distance as much as possible socially, physically, as long as we are wearing our masks when needed, getting tested as soon as we feel symptoms, as long as we're doing all these things, then hopefully there's a chance we'll be able to continue on without having all of these restrictions and regulations and whatnots hindering us. But just some figures for us. Ontario reported 827 more cases of COVID-19 yesterday. Now the province's labs have processed fewer than 24,000 tests, which is about half of their daily capacity. They are able to do about 45 to 50,000 tests a day. Now, earlier even last month in August, we were doing a lot more tests daily because we wanted to be testing as many people as possible, especially within the province of Ontario, just to understand better how impacted we were. And we've noticed that the cases that we'd seen earlier in the pandemic, earlier during our lockdown days, that were so high that kept us at home were probably not the most realistic number of cases, though they were still high. Chances are, because of the number of cases that we were conducting back then, there were probably a lot more positives that we were missing that would have impacted the number of cases that we had, say in April, even in May, that would have maybe impacted our reopening plans and our reopening schedule. But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20, no pun intended. The more we know now, the better it is we can move forward. Now, the province does know that more testing would definitely mean that we're going to see a lot more positives. And though they are slowly rolling out new incentives to ensure people who are getting tested are only those who know they have come in contact with someone who has tested positive, or they are actually showing symptoms. Right now, the province is saying that those who may be asymptomatic should not necessarily go to a test center to get tested just yet, that those who have been in contact with someone who's tested positive or show symptoms are the ones that are encouraged to go to test centers now. Now, this may be worrying to some of you because it may seem like we're going back to how we were earlier in our early lockdown days. That's what we're going to call it from now on, because we're trying to figure out a way to describe we're still in a pandemic, so it's not like pre-pandemic, we're still in it. But our earlier lockdown days, the days where barely anything was open, everything was being delivered, you couldn't really leave your house because only the grocery stores and essential businesses were open. Now, further down the line, there are more things open. Restaurants have opened up. Now they're slowly kind of closing back down again. We had a lot more entertainment, recreational facilities reopen. Now they're possibly closing back down again and going to stay closed for a while, depending on the number of cases we're seeing. So we're still in the middle of a pandemic, though we may not necessarily be under strict lockdown rules and regulations. That doesn't take away from the fact that this is very real and it's still happening. So if for whatever reason you thought that because we have a little bit more freedom, that meant that, all of the regulations can just go out the window and we can forget about that, this is a reminder, a wake-up call, if you will, a incentive for you maybe to realize and hopefully start making decisions that are safer for you and those around you as well. Because at the end of the day, we are protecting ourselves to also protect others so that we cannot continue spreading this virus around. And I know, I completely understand and I empathize sitting in this chair, it's very easy for me to be like, you guys, let's do what we need to do to ensure that we're not going to continue in this pandemic. Very easy, as it's impacted a lot of people in very different ways, and not everyone can afford to stay locked up in the house, working from home. Not everyone has that luxury and privilege, and we understand that. But at the same time, not everyone has luxury and privilege for great healthcare either. So we don't want to, add a strain where there already is a strain. So dealing with this pandemic is rough, it's hard, it's not fun, it's not easy. Trust me, I can't wait to go home and visit my family. I've been waiting for it all year, but I can't because a lot of our travel restrictions have been put back in place. A lot of EU countries aren't even letting Canadians travel, non-essentially, of course. If you are traveling for essential purposes, you will probably be allowed to, but for non-essential travel, Canadians have essentially been barred from a lot of EU countries. So that says something. That says that our caseload, though a lot of other countries, even in the EU, are also going back to what they call the yellow zone, or are currently in the yellow zone, meaning that their number of cases have also risen and they're needing to pull back a little bit more and increase the restrictions, if you will. A lot of the world is dealing with it, but this also means that just because you feel that you are healthy and maybe those in your household are healthy, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else in the neighborhood is healthy and able to socialize the way that we might want to, or the way we used to before. So it's just little reminders to know that, this is our new normal. This is something we're probably gonna have to get used to at least until the end of the year. I know we were looking forward to 2021. We're like, 2020 can leave, out of here, 2021 is coming in, but we don't know if we're still gonna have to keep dealing with this in 2021 as well. To ensure that we don't have to have another, 10 months, 8 months, 7 months, however long, of lockdown, of these restrictions. The government's really urging us to listen to what they're saying, though it can be confusing at times. I know when things are open and then they close again and then they open again, it gets confusing, it gets irritating and frustrating, yes. But at the same time, it's to ensure that no more people are losing their lives to this virus. Right now, the death toll count is over 3,000 in Canada, across Canada. We've seen at least 4 deaths this week so far, counting. Though that might seem like a small number in the grand scheme of things, it's still one too many. So just a reminder that though restaurants may still be able to accommodate outdoor seating on patios, it's getting a little cold. I don't know who's really wanting to sit outdoors anymore. I mean, some of them are heated, of course, because Toronto understands Torontonian winter is not fun. But restaurants are not seating indoors anymore, so that's a change that we're gonna have to get used to during this winter. Some of us that was the way we entertained and went out during the cooler months, let's just say. But now that's something that's sort of taken away. Cinemas have been closed, other recreational facilities have also been closed. So this is just kind of like a wake-up call. We're about 7-8 months into this now. We're slowly getting into a rhythm, I understand, but with the constant changes, it's kind of hard to get into some kind of rhythm that we understand, when you're able to go out and then you're back home again. It's really uncertain. The safest bet is to just continue keeping your distance, continue washing your hands, continue wearing your masks, continue just doing what we were doing in May, April, March even, when we were under lockdown, just to ensure that we're all safe and sound and we can continue pushing forward, moving on. We don't want to be here for the rest of the decade. We just celebrated a new decade. We want to ensure that this decade keeps moving forward, upwards and onwards. So this is just a reminder that yes, we're seeing more cases, especially here in Ontario, especially in Toronto, which has the highest number of daily cases in the province. So us Torontonians, this is directly to us. Just remember, pandemic is not over. We are still in the midst of this. It's not easy, it's not hard. I mean, it's not easy, it's a little hard to continue to, adapt to the changes and to the ever-changing environment and society that we live in now. But we're all in this together at the end of the day. All of us, everyone around this world. That's something that's somewhat comforting, that we can all empathize with one another because we're all sort of going through the same thing. We're all dealing with the uncertainties together. So let's find solace in that, at least. That it's not just us going through it, because it can get really lonely, understandably, being at home alone, not being able to socialize the way we used to before. But it's important that we continue to do as much as we can to see the change that we want to see in the world, ensure that we can continue moving on and being the social butterflies we once were to some capacity. But with that being said, we understand that, majority of the world is experiencing what is now, I guess, the second wave, or in some cases, like the US, the third wave, or just continuation of the first wave that just never went away. We're in waves right now. The COVID wave is very real. Yes, but that hasn't stopped a lot of youth coming out and marching in the streets. And we know that has taken over our, social media mainframe, our headspace as well. We know that that's something, especially on the Chat Up Show we've been talking about since May, since the first spurt, if you will, of protests first started, ignoring the anti-lockdown protests that had happened before, going to put that to the side. There have been a lot of protests urging governments to change, urging for justice around the world. And it's not just about police brutality. I mean, in Chile, they've been holding protests that now it's official that their constitution will be rewritten. So for those who are saying, what does protesting actually do? What does marching in the streets, stopping traffic, causing all these jams result in? And in some cases, like Chile, it actually results in a change in the constitution, a change towards democracy. This was a change that happened with the help of elected local citizens, actually, to help bring the change that the citizens wanted to see, that they weren't seeing from the government all along. So they took matters into their own hands. And look at that, they're getting a rewrite in the constitution. This may seem unfathomable to a lot of people because, there's so many places that have been protesting for so long, and you're like, have we really seen any change? Has anything really happened? Well, now you can quote Chile as an example in the modern era, in modern day, in 2020, that the protestings and the voice of the people uniting together for one cause really did make an impact that's monumental. This is a big deal. Now, of course, we had been talking about the End SARS protest here on the Chat Up Show. We had shown some clips, even earlier in the show, showed some clips of the protest that we attended a couple weeks ago here in Toronto for the End SARS movement, is what we're going to call it now, because it really is a movement. It's mobilized a lot of youth, not just in Nigeria, but across the diaspora as well. Mobilize them into a sense that they have united under one cause. I mean, look at this picture here. Everyone is here for the same reason, to get the attention of the government, to make a change that they want to see, essentially to end SARS and the police brutality and the brutality in general that citizens have been subjected to, that citizens have been facing for so long, since essentially the inception of this organization or branch of law enforcement. Folks came together in solidarity to stand up for what they believed in. It's in that unity that we really do find that strength and that power. Fists raised in the high in the sky, people feeling united, a united front, calling for the same change. It's powerful, but especially seeing that happen in the diaspora at large, that we're seeing folks who maybe were not born in Nigeria even, but grew up around the culture, grew up around the traditions, have Nigerian heritage, that are coming out and saying, even I am saying enough is enough. I haven't even had to live through this, but even I know from whatever experiences, from hearing stories from family members, from visiting, at Christmas time and being warned, like, hey, don't go dressed like this because you might get stopped by the police. Don't, use this car because you might get stopped by the police. Don't do this, don't do that because of the police. The very people who are supposed to be protecting us are the ones that we have feared for so long. That's why I think that this moment, especially for Nigerian youths, was so impactful, so monumental, was because we saw the unity across the diaspora, saw protests and marches happening in the UK, in the US, here in Canada even, which we know are the main diasporic hubs for Nigerian citizens. Just that alone, just seeing that unity, that force, that strength in the united voice of the young folks, the younger generations, who maybe, some folks may be feeling you should just sit in your place. I mean, we suffered through it. Why do you think that you're going to make the change? Why not? Genuinely, why not? Why are people so uncertain about these protests that are happening? Why are people wanting folks to go back home and not stay in the streets, but can understand why people are protesting for Black Lives Matter? I mean, genuinely, I'm asking why not, Why is it that we can see these images plastered across social media and still feel that it's okay? that, well, it's part of life. It's a way of life. It's how we lived in Nigeria. That's how we're going to continue. So suck it up. Why can't the youth come together and say, no, we want to change? And we're united in this front to bring that change. And we may not necessarily be living in Nigeria, but we still want that same change. I think that's pretty powerful. The fact that people who aren't even in the country are the ones who are calling and helping those in the country calling for change. Now, of course, with the End SARS protests, we now know that SARS has been disbanded. We aren't seeing as many law enforcement officials in the streets anymore. A lot of police officers aren't necessarily out patrolling as much as they used to in the streets of Nigeria. We're still seeing protests continue across the country, but now they've been, added to by just general anger from citizens across the board. And the reason behind that was because this past week, warehouses across the country were, I guess, the easiest way to describe it is ransacked by citizens who discovered COVID provisions that had been stored there by their government. Now, these were provisions that were supposed to be distributed to citizens who were heavily impacted by COVID to help aid as relief, if you will, for those who struggle to feed their families, for those who struggle to make money to be able to make ends meet, that this was a way to aid them. The president had given a sum of money to various governors and local governments to ensure that their citizens and constituents were taken care of during this pandemic when we were told to stay at home under lockdown. Only for citizens to find that there was warehouses chock full of different types of food stuff, just sitting there waiting, essentially, waiting to be distributed. This only adds to just more distrust of the government, in my honest opinion, because who's going to trust someone that, doesn't even look out for them? This was something that was supposed to aid citizens in a time that they really needed it. They needed the relief. We weren't sure how long we're still unsure how long the pandemic is going to last, to be fair. We weren't sure how long lockdown was going to last. We were saying 2 weeks in the beginning. And then after the first month, we were kind of like, oh, okay, maybe not 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. And during that time, those who couldn't make ends meet, those who couldn't continue on doing what they used to do to make money, to ensure that they were fed, that their family were fed, that the bills were paid, couldn't do that. And so they were suffering essentially in silence while government was hoarding essentially the relief, what they were supposed to be giving and distributing to their citizens. Now, just keeping that in mind, and then thinking about the fact that this happened pretty much days after the Lekki toll gate incident. There's already so much heightened tension across the country due to the ongoing protests, due to people still being shot by the police during these protests, due to a lot of fake news, I guess, being spread across social media, so people are unsure what to believe at this point. There's still so much uncertainty, and of course, this just adds to even more uncertainty as to what to believe from the government. Because why genuinely were these provisions kept in these warehouses? I mean, Lagos State governor came out and said that they were waiting to repackage them because the provisions were too large just to give to one person. They wanted to be able to repackage into smaller quantities to pass around. When was this going to happen? Were you going to announce this at any point, or was it because, people found them already, so now you just have to cover your own tail? These are a lot of conversations that Nigerians are having, a lot of questions that have been circulating and surfacing on social media, especially, that's our new hub. I mean, essentially, that's where the End SARS protests began. So that's where a lot of people were going for their information. There's a lot of information going on around there. And it's hard for someone sitting in the diaspora, who isn't living in it, who isn't there every single day, seeing the day-to-day of what people are going through every single day in that country, not knowing, and only taking what, we're seeing in the media, what our government officials are saying, even what our president may or may not be saying. Considering he's gotten a lot of backlash for not speaking out soon enough after the Lekki tollgate incident or about the End SARS protests. There's only so much we know about what's going on unless that information is shared with us. And that also almost essentially can hinder how much we help to make that change. But that's something that I wanted to discuss today, about how the diaspora can really make a change in terms of culture, in terms of institutional, just any kind of change. When we're not living in the country that we call home, how can we outside of the country then aid to help make these changes so that one day if we do choose to go back, it's prepared and ready for us, and we don't have to deal with governments who are hoarding and hiding provisions for the needy in the country, those who are battling poverty in the country and unable to even feed themselves, or politicians who are hoarding money even that is supposed to help those who are in need in the country. How do we then come in and make the change that we want to see? This is, I mean, the Nigerian diaspora is arguably probably the largest in the world. Anywhere you go, you can genuinely find a Nigerian. That I have learned from the number of protests I've seen happening across the world, is that there are Nigerians almost everywhere. I mean, there were protests that were held this week in Helsinki in Finland. Example of just the magnitude of our diaspora. And to see us all coming together for one cause, it is hopeful, but will this actually bring about change? I mean, we hear of stories of Chile, like Chile, where the constitution is rewritten, and we're hoping that the same will happen in Nigeria, that there will be some kind of change, you know, organizationally, foundationally, institutionally, some kind of change that will bring about positivity, bring about goodness, bring about, you know, bring a flourishing to the country, help it flourish more than it is right now. It's a wonder how we in the diaspora can really help. I mean, watching these scenes the last 2 weeks, not knowing what's the truth because we weren't there, you know, we're getting these firsthand witness accounts from those who were live streaming the events, and then getting accounts from government, from their officials, or from people that their witnesses that they've heard these stories from. We're seeing scenes unfold on social media. There's a lot that's going on. There's a lot of information, and it's very hard to take in, deal with. I know this has been rough for a lot of people because we're unsure. You know, there's still so many things that we don't know that's happening even across the country. How many people have truly lost their lives to these protests? How many people have been deeply impacted by these protests? Whether these protests have actually made a difference, if the disbandment of SARS actually means that there will be real change to how policing is conducted in that country. It's still all so uncertain. Just like these times, it feels like 2020 was really the time for change. It feels like that people were ready to get up, get out, be in these streets, hoping for some kind of change in their government. I mean, BLM is still out there. People are still protesting for Black lives in the United States. Up until recently, I mean, this week, there were demonstrations held for another man that lost his life, Walter Wallace Jr. His life was taken by police officers in Philadelphia. Still happening. So we see that, and then we think back to Nigeria and the brutality people have faced, the harassment people have faced from police officers and law enforcement officials. And we're wondering if there will be a change made, because precedent shows in other countries that maybe there won't be. People are still losing their lives in America to police brutality. How will that impact Nigeria? Now hold on to that thought. We're going to take a quick break. Once we're back, we are going to be welcoming our very special guest for today, Dr. Loretta I'm going to mispronounce, Oboro Okor. My apologies. We're going to have her on the show, and we're going to be discussing a little bit more about being in the diaspora for change. Stay tuned.
Do you believe you could host an entertaining, engaging, and thoughtful weekly show? Or are you a business person or entrepreneur interested in building a brand for yourself? Can you connect with an audience and have strong social media skills? If so, the GBCam Network would love to invite you to join our team. We're looking for driven, genuine folks who are willing to work hard as an independent broadcaster. If this sounds like you, come join our team. For more information, email your resume to career@gbkm.fm. That is career, CAREER, at gbkm.fm. It's time to turn your passion into a career. Do you believe you could host an entertaining, engaging, and thoughtful weekly show? Or are you a business person or entrepreneur interested in building a brand for yourself? Can you connect with an audience and have strong social media skills? If so, the GBCam Network would love to invite you to join our team. We're looking for driven, genuine folks who are willing to work hard as an independent broadcaster. If this sounds like you, come join our team. For more information, email your resume to career@gbkm.fm. That is career, CAREER, at gbkm.fm. It's time to turn your passion into a
Do you know who you are? What is your name?
Sometimes you wonder why and wonder how. Don't be alone. Just stay calm, cause even if you choose or not to.
My child, recite the words of this ancient mythology. The wisdom I disperse in this verse, no apology. Memorize to keep you from evil theology. For you, the darker hue, you denied your equality. See, for generations we perpetrated psychology. Divide and conquer each other, really lynch policy. You cannot build each other up, how will you build economy?
Whenever a client sits in that chair, I pretend they're part of my family. What would I do for my family if they were in this situation? I take it personally to make sure that I find the best possible avenue for them to succeed. If you do it with a pure heart, and if you do it with integrity and professionalism, you're sure to succeed. Whenever a client sits in that chair, I pretend they're part of my family. What would I do for my family if they were in this situation? I take it personally to make sure that I find the best possible avenue for them to succeed. If you do it with a pure heart, and if you do it with integrity and professionalism, you're sure to.
Hello, welcome back to the Chat Up Show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Lloydie. Now, today we're discussing change and the diaspora, how we in the diaspora can really cause any kind of change to happen. Now, we're currently waiting on our guest to tune in with us, but while we're waiting, we have our very special producer and president, Kenny Bazwaye, joining us today, joining our discussion today. How are you doing, Kenny?
Thank you for having me once again. I promise you today I'm not going to steal your show. I'm just gonna do what you ask me to do.
Do you know what? That's what brings the flavor, honestly, to the show. This is the Chat Up Show. We go with the flow, right?
Yeah,
Now,
thank you for having me.
Of course, Kenny. Now, I do want to get your opinion on the recent events that have been happening across our lovely home country of Nigeria. There have been some updates, regarding the warehouses and the stocked provisions that were supposed to go to our citizens. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest, I'm going to tell you my honest opinion and thoughts on this.
Let me get comfortable with this.
It depends on how you see it. It's not always cut and dry. It is barbaric. It is unacceptable if it is totally true that the state government are refusing to disburse those palliatives that was designed for the people. At some point, the federal government have said that they have done their part. They did their part when it comes to palliative, and the whole media rejected that option. We said that no, how can you do that? People are suffering. It's not true. So with the advent of this warehouse that has been discovered by people, it's clear that this was true, what the federal government said. But I'm going to switch it a little bit now and see it from the other angle. One can argue that this thing has been kept should there be a second wave. But to debunk that, some people will say that there are some goods and services there. There's some goods and materials there that was already expiring. So why will you be keeping an expiring product for a second wave? So there's a lot to look into. I want to look at it from the middle, from the center. That way I won't be going too far left or too far right. I do believe again that it is evil. As a matter of fact, it's beyond evil when people are keeping what is designed and what is supposed to be distributed to help people go through this hard time that we are currently going through. Somebody is keeping it for their selfish interest. However, I think there should be a body that will look into this, because this corruption has eaten into the fabric of the Nigeria as a country itself, and we have to kind of create another body that can look at things from the external.
Now, with that being said, wasn't that part of our current president's campaign, that was something that he was going to combat, looking at the corruption that has...
Well, if you are dragging the federal, the center, the president in this discussion, I'll tell you this. Nigeria president is probably the most powerful president in the world, number one. The power that is given to the center has not been given to any president in the world, in the whole world, number one. Number two, I will summarize it. The president promised change when he was coming to the office. He promised to fight corruption, right? So when he came, he did the same thing he promised. He came to the office. Instead of giving us change, he promised, he changed. That's number one. Number two, I don't see, to be honest with you, if you look at it from the lens of, by analyzing things, you will see that I don't see him at all combating corruption. And I can back that up with many reasons. There are many people in APC as a political party that you know that today they should be tried, but they are not. Let's take that. And there are so many things that are happening within the country where you would think that if you're actually fighting corruptions, those people should be on the front line, people that have been tried. Let me even move furthermore by telling you that the president violated a lot. The president, in my own submissive opinion, when it comes to the arms of government, which is judiciary, in my own submissive opinion, the president has violated and watered down the strength of the judiciary arm in Nigeria.
Why would you
I'll
say
set
that?
some example. There have been cases whereby people are supposed to be released. When you say the judge will say this person is supposed to be released, and I can count one or two occasions whereby the federal has sustained and said no, this is not this person will not be released. And keep in mind, whether it's a good intention or bad intention from that judge, that is a judge. And that's an arm of the government that you cannot. Because you see, even those that go to church said, when house is divided upon himself, it will not hold. So there are so many things that you drill into critically. I'm not trying to talk too much on your show, but there are too many things you drill into critically. And with those findings, things you will find, I think it's safe to say that the president has not done what he has promised.
There's just too much lacking in too many different areas of
Yeah,
the
but
government.
because if you even look at the president's speech, let's take it from the president's speech.
The recent one.
The recent one, yeah, I mean to say the recent one. He said a lot, like somebody summarized it. We wanted him to speak, and he spoke and make us speechless. So we clamor for him to speak. He spoke and he made us speechless in the sense that he said a whole lot of stuff, but he didn't say anything. Even the military spoke on Monday. Today is Wednesday. They never mentioned the shooting into Lekki. They never mentioned the death. There are key words that the military never mentioned. For example, the key word they were using, I'll tell you, they're using hijack, sponsored. People are sponsoring it internally and internationally. Those are words they're using. But they omitted the word the word shooting. They omitted the word killing. They omitted the word dead.
I mean, to speak candid, aren't they trying to cover their tracks as well at the end of the day? They're not going to go out there and say, yes, we murdered. Though that is what ethically morally speaking, should have happened. That yes, this is what happened.
The fact that incident was totally ignored in those two speech. The fact that it was ignored.
Yeah.
Okay, there are some things that you will say, oh, we are sorry, we apologize for what happened, we don't know exactly who did it, we are investigating. At least you acknowledge that it even happened.
Yeah.
For you to omit it completely is absurd.
I mean, but as far as the government's concerned, no one died during the Lekki toll gate shootings.
Well, we have videos or footage of people that actually, family members, that this was imparted by way of losing their family to that process that happened and that shooting that happened in Lekki toll gate. And we will be releasing that video this week. We have videos and a live
Exclusive
testimony.
content.
Yes, that people actually were saying this is what happened. So what are you going to say? A video evidence. I mean, this is 2020 and this is almost the end of October.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that we cannot verify a doctored video. This is not doctored. A live and real video. People were live on their cell phone, on a live
removing bullets
feed.
from people
when
on
you
live
see
feed. Yeah.
bullets such like this that we are seeing right here, when you see people shooting in the air in the darkness. That is what we are talking about. And yet, a federal government, the military, the Nigerian military, came out and never mentioned something like that. I think it's barbaric, it's wicked, it's beyond wickedness.
Now, On that note, how do you, I mean, just thinking in the context of what this month means for Nigeria, 60 years of independence, and we're here having these conversations. I remember growing up around the dinner table, I heard conversations about corruption all the time. And that now I myself are joining in these conversations discussing why we're still seeing these same corrupt officials still in power, still having some form of control over the country.
See, I'll start by quoting my very good friend, Mr. Wise. He goes, our father's generation, they experienced World War. They grew up with that fear or that phobia. I'll use my own word now.
Yeah.
Their children were now careful. The children we are having don't have that sentiment. They didn't experience that war or so on. So they are going to bring that changes that will climb on for. However, corruption has eaten directly into the fabric of the society that is like a cacaworm that it will be very hard to abort from our system.
And it almost follows us everywhere, to be quite honest.
Yeah, that's why I was going to go there, because you spoke about the diasporans. How are the diasporans going to bring that changes? I do believe that, yes, we can ignite. I want to carefully choose the word ignite some changes, but it takes the people on ground to actually enforce it. For example, we have the economical power, the technical know-how, the ideas, and the momentum. We can seize the momentum too as diasporans, but there is a role for the people on ground to play. So it's like a puzzle. One part has to be in it to become a full and a fulfilled picture, I would say. So the role of people on ground is also very vital. We can tell we did a test drive, a pilot program with the Edo State election, where a lot of diasporans were involved. And I can tell you whether some people agree or disagree that the impact was felt. But that's also because the people on ground was in line with the people in diasporas. What has happened in the past is that sometimes the politicians are able to, use the word, for lack of a better word, brainwash them to be directly opposite of the agenda of the diasporans. So if we are able to have one agenda, one goal, with the resources that the diasporans have, and our experience that we have acquired with the time being in diaspora, it may,
quote unquote, may,
yeah,
yes.
It may.
Now, I mean, wouldn't you say we saw that with the End SARS protest, though? Because first, I want to preface this conversation by saying that a lot of people were asking, what is protesting in Canada, in Toronto, in the UK, and the US even going to do if the problem is back home? But because, those who were on ground, on the front lines in Nigeria had those 5 demands, those 5 lists that they were requesting from the government to meet, then those in the diaspora also continued on with those 5 demands, urging the government, like, here are the 5 demands from your citizens. We stand by it, and we're going to amplify it even more.
First of all, talking about the 5 demands, let me quickly bring this to your attention. Yes, the 5 demands that they ask from the public, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is that this is not the first time that sex has been banned.
Yeah.
So the people felt like, you know what, this is not new. We've heard this before. We've seen this before. We're not just going to take it by what you tell us because we don't trust you as a government.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, a lot of people, or the government did not quickly realize that NSAS is going to metamorphose into a bigger movement where they cannot control it anymore. Had they known, they would have kind of controlled it. So they did not know. And right now, as we speak, a lot of things has come up because of the NSAS. So the momentum is still ongoing. But what kind of disappointed me was that how, in my own opinion, and I don't have a complete evidence to this, so this is just my own say, how this movement was infiltrated by other people with mal or bad will. Yeah. So for example, looting and other stuff, stealing of ammunition and so on. And one can argue that maybe some arm of government sponsor it. We don't have evidence to that. We will not be able to prove that.
Yeah, that's just hearsay at this point, that folks feel that the government was behind it. Now we're going to take a quick break, so stay tuned before we continue on in our conversation of change and the diaspora. Stay tuned.
Career. Do you believe you could host an entertaining, engaging, and thoughtful weekly show? Or are you a business person or entrepreneur interested in building a brand for yourself? Can you connect with an audience and have strong social media skills? If so, the GBCAM network would love to invite you to join our team. We're looking for driven, genuine folks who are willing to work hard as an independent broadcaster. If this sounds like you, come join our team. For more information, email your resume to career@gbkm.fm.
Whenever a client sits in that chair, I pretend they're part of my family. What would I do for my family if they were in this situation? I take it personally to make sure that I find the best possible avenue for them to succeed. If you do it with a pure heart, and if you do it with integrity and professionalism, you're sure to succeed. Whenever a client sits in that chair, I pretend they're part of my family. What would I do for my family if they were in this situation? I take it personally to make sure that I find the best possible avenue for them to succeed. If you do it with a pure heart, and if you do it with integrity and professionalism, you're sure to succeed. Whenever a client sits in that chair, I pretend they're part of my family. What would I do for my family if they were in this situation? I take it personally to make sure that I find the best possible avenue for them to succeed. If you do it with a pure heart, and if you do it with integrity and professionalism.
Hello, welcome back to the Chat Up Show. Again, I'm your host, Elizabeth Aloyde, and we are joined here today by our special guest, Dr. Loretta Ogboro-Okor, who is also the editor-in-chief of Loretta Reveals, author and doctor. Welcome to the show, Dr. Loretta.
Hello, Elizabeth. How are you? Good evening.
Good
I hope
evening.
everybody's fine across there in Canada.
Yeah, thank you for joining us all the way from the UK.
Thank you.
So, Loretta, first I want to ask about how you are doing, how you've been doing, seeing the scenes unfold across the home country in Nigeria, seeing these EndSARS protests pop up and continue to spiral into bigger issues, if you will, now.
It's been very sad for some of us, and I dare say there'll be very few people who are not saddened by what's happening in Nigeria currently.
Yeah.
It's not the best thing. However, sometimes these kind of things need to happen for all of us to go back to the drawing board.
Now, on that note, you do say on your website, Loretta Reveals, you say that, I'm going to quote you here, there are no impossibilities and that challenges in life are the avalanche push factors we require every now and again to enable us to break our own records. First, I would love you to help us unpack this quote statement of yours for us.
Loretta Reveals is a motivational e-space. It's where we look at the success stories of everyday people in whatever they do. And there are some amazing stories on there, not just in their professional life, but also in whatever anybody does. I mean, Elizabeth, you agree with me that there are challenges in life. We've got push and pull factors. But what keeps people going? What keeps them motivated? What makes them get up every day and want to go? I dare say that the challenges we see before us are some of those things that get us going. The criticisms we receive are some of those things that get us going. We want to be our very best self. We want to be the best of what we can be. And it is really, really important that people take this away. We at Loretta Reveals, we've never ever, and I as an individual, seen challenges as a setback, but rather it is an impetus to see what I can do to overcome that challenge. There's one of the remarkable stories on there of a young girl who finished school in Nigeria. She finished her university education and she got a job. She started frying akara. And today she's a big time supplying companies in Abuja That's akara, which is a bean cake. So there is nothing that should keep anybody down for too long. However, we also strive on Loretta Reviews to tell you that it is not a crime to fall. It is not a crime not to succeed. However, it is a crime to stay falling. And the only person who can decide to succeed or not is each and every one of ourselves. We are the ones who would take that decision. So it's an e-space I enjoin everybody to go to. Because of the recent coronavirus and all of the things happening in Nigeria, we've sort of slowed down our pace of publication, understandably. But very soon we'll pick up again. And it's not limited to just Nigeria. You have people there from America, you have people there from right across the world.
So then would you say that 2020 has kind of been that avalanche push factor for a lot of us dealing with this pandemic? Though it may have been a challenge, it was still something that inspired the protests, even inspired those to actually go out and seek the change that they want to see.
You're right, Elizabeth. Many people say 2020 should not even be recorded as a year. But I tell people that personally, I don't know about all this, but I don't make progress when I'm very comfortable. I reason more when I'm hit by a lot of challenges. And for each and every one of us on this planet, 2020 has been a challenge. So you've seen people beginning to think out of the box. People are now holding meetings on Zooms that never thought would happen before. New businesses are springing up. And people have had time to introspect, to reflect. And without knowing it, I think governments should be very careful right now, because what's happening in Nigeria will not just be limited to Nigeria alone. People have a lot of time on their hands to actually think about the lot they are getting in life. Have their governments been free and fair to them? So I think that in as much as we want to all say that 2020 has not been a very good year, 2020 has brought out something in each and every one of us. One, resilience. Two, the spirit of communityship. You see more people checking on people now, just calling to say, how are you? Are you fine? Are you okay? You see more churches, you see more mosques doing out a lot more community outreach. Because before we used to see ourselves and we took it for granted. But now, not seeing ourselves, we get worried. If I don't hear from you, Elizabeth, now you're on my contact list.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks' time, I'm going to start thinking, oh, should we be giving her a call? So I will enjoin people to see the other side of this coin and not just think it's all gloom and doom. And put it to a good use. Think out of the box. Each and every one of us needs to think out of the box. We need to think, how do we make the planet better? You know, someone said to me, one of my Chinese friends, she said, the air in China had never been so clean as when we had this pandemic. Because there were no cars on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that goes for most of the other major and big cities. And besides, I looked at my wardrobe the other day. All my clothes were lying there. My handbags were there. My car was packed. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to wear the clothes to. So we see that these things are all infinitesimal things. At the end of the day, what really matters is what value do we attach to human life? How do I seek to help the next person? How much am I able to love my neighbor as myself? What impact am I making in not just my generation, but in future generations? That's what really matters.
Yeah.
And that's what 2020 is making all of us to look at. Some of us have never really liked looking at that aspect of life. And we grumble. We really grumble. But it's something we should come to terms with.
Yeah. Now, I mean, just touching on the facts that you were talking about, how this time a lot of people have really appreciated community, especially. For those of us in the diaspora right now, our community back home in Nigeria is going through something major, monumental. As you said, could be because people have more time to slow down and really reflect and think internally about what is going on around their lives and how they themselves can make a change to positively impact future generations or even their own generation. Now, do you believe that those of us sitting I guess, on the outskirts of it, looking in, and not necessarily on the front lines in, ground zero, if that's what we can call it, of this movement is what it is. It's bigger than just End SARS now. It's really becoming a movement. Do you think that those of us in the diaspora can also add to this call for change, this call for action for our government to really make the change that we want to see for ourselves and for our future generations?
Elizabeth, in my book that I wrote, My Father's Daughter, I wrote there that there is no free freedom, okay? And I wrote there also that only Nigerians can change Nigeria for Nigerians. We may do this in partnership with other people, but to think that other people are going to come and do it for us is absurd. So looking at this End SARS protest, it is a wake-up call for every single Nigerian across the world. And there is no freedom. Everything must happen as a sacrifice. I mean, today I've been at work all day, but I thought this program must happen. I've not even had lunch. I'm still in the hospital premises. But I said, no, this must go on. And that is sacrifice. So we must all learn that we need to sacrifice something. And I think the End SARS protest has brought it to the fore that Nigerians are understanding that. So whether you are in diaspora or whether you are in the home country, it actually makes no difference. What is important, the difference we need to now start having is a difference of mindset, where we'll know that we need to make that sacrifice. Revolutions start and continue in the minds of people. Even the French Revolution, the UK has had its share. Every country has had its share. So even if you take those boys, the girls, men and women off the street, the minds of the people, what is happening in there? Are they content with the governance and rulership of the day? I won't call it leadership, because I see it as rulership. A situation where there is no value for human life, that is rulership. So if the people are discontent in their heart, then the first thing they need to learn how to do is make sacrifices. If you are in diaspora, make the sacrifice you can make in your niche. What do I mean? You may not be able to be on the streets in Nigeria, but you will be able to do something. You may be able to push out the message. You may be able to fund them. You may be able to put their message out there with your platform. So each and every one of us must find out what we can do, whether you're at home or you are abroad. And it played out. It played out in the last Edo election. It's played out in the End SARS as well. We saw a lot of Nigerian, second generation, British-born, Canadians, US-born, Saudi Arabia, wherever they were, they all came together. The important thing is not where you are geographically. It is where your heart and your head is. That is what matters. Where your heart is, if your heart begins to think, what can I sacrifice? What can I do? What can I do to make the lives of the average person in my home country better? That is when the change will come. So being in the diaspora can be a major plus. Coming together in the diaspora is a big plus for all of us.
Now, with all that being said, Nigeria's turned 60 in terms of independence. A lot of people have hope for the future still, though, these last few weeks may have dwindled that little bit of hope that they had. What is your hope for the next 60 years, if you will, for Nigeria?
I am very hopeful and I'm very positive. Change does not come overnight. I think the moment each and every one of us understand that we are part of the change. Sorry if you hear some background noise. Like I said, I'm still in the hospital. That is when we will begin to make that difference. Nigeria is heading somewhere, but Nigeria cannot head somewhere without Nigerians. So when I see people saying, oh, Nigeria, we are still at 6, someone said the other time, Nigeria is still a fool at 60. I said, no, please take that back. Because the reason is this, because when you make sacrifices, you want to see it grow, don't you? You want to nurture it. You're taking a risk, haven't you? So you are not going to say your risk is useless. And besides, combine all our positive energy and propel it over the next 60 years. and you see what happens. And the desire to propel positive energy can only mean that you want to do what is right in your own space. So you want to bring your children up and tell them, oh, if you come home with a phone that mommy and daddy cannot account for, you ask them, where is that phone from? If you have a leader who was supposed to tar a road and didn't tar it, you will ask them, why didn't you tar it? So you are beginning to want to hold leadership accountable. And that is the only time that rulership will change to leadership, when you hold them accountable. And Nigeria has to get there for two reasons. Nigeria is the sleeping and dormant giant of Africa. Africa's destiny and Africa's liberation is completely tied to Nigeria. And the other thing is that if we do not take our own narrative in our hands and spread it and own it, other people are going to tell us what we want to hear. We are going to be doing, it's like having a canvas. You have your own canvas, isn't it? What picture are you painting on it? Are you painting a picture of doom and gloom? That is what other people are going to help you propagate. But if you paint a picture of a positive picture where you see yourself, that is what other people are going to support. So in 60 years, Nigeria is going to emerge as one of the greatest countries on the planet. And there are Nigerians willing to push that already. The NSAS is showing us that already. The NSAS has showed us that. There is no doubt that there are Nigerians across the globe, everywhere in the world, willing to push Nigeria to the next stage.
Thank you so much
after all, Elizabeth, America is 100 and something years old.
Yes.
So we've still got a few steps to take. But it will be a sin if we don't make use of those remaining steps we have to take properly. That is where we will have a problem. So our followership is awoke. It should stay awoke. It's no more awakening. I call it awoke now. And we have to, honestly, we have to run with this awokeness.
Awokeness. I like that. Yes. I mean, now everyone is woke, I think that this period had everyone wake up. Now, I do want to kind of segue back to, you mentioned your book that you'd written. Now, I do want to ask you, it's called My Father's Daughter, and it's available on Amazon as well for those who are searching. I want to ask you what inspired this particular relationship dynamic to be written about for you.
When I was growing up, I actually thought everybody's parents was like mine. I thought everybody's parents were just like my dad and my mom, especially my father, because my father made me grow up to have so much self-confidence, to realize that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and to be my best friend. So I like to use examples. Let me give you an example. When I was in primary school, I was really bullied, primary one. And I would have all these children, like 30 of them, clapping their hands and singing after me and saying pussycat eyes, because I had hazel eyes, like the contact lenses people pay for these days. Yellow pawpaw, because my skin was lighter than theirs. And rabbit skin, rabbit teeth, because my jaw was protruding. Teeth was protruding. And you know that bullying is when there is a pressure gradient or when there is a numbers gradient. So when you are the only fairer skinned person in a community where everybody is darker skinned, you can easily be bullied. When you are the youngest in a place where everybody's old, you can easily be bullied. When your boss is there, so there must be that gradient. And every day I come to school and these children will bully me, sing, and I'll start crying and hiding. I never said it at home until one day my dad came to pick me and saw me crying. He said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Well, because they've been bullying me. Look at what's been happening." I was praying, "Oh no, Daddy, please don't go into that class. Daddy, please don't go," because that would make it worse, okay? And my father, in his infinite wisdom, he didn't go in. He just said, "Let's go home." When we got home, he asked me, he said, "Are you not fair-skinned?" I said, "Yes, Daddy, I am." "Is your upper jaw and your teeth not protruding?" I said, "Daddy, it is." "And you know why? Because you suck your thumb." I said, yes, sir. He said, and your eyes, are they not a unique color? I said, yes, Daddy, they are. He said, so what are those children saying that is not true? And I paused and I thought, oh, what are they saying that's not true? He said, look, you are beautifully made. You have the finest smile in the world. Your teeth, they're just perfect for you. So please don't cry, my daughter. When 30 people take out time and start to clap and sing for you, all you have to do is dance, because they are singing for you, because you are very important. And the next day I went to school and the first one came and said, oh, pussycat teeth, pussycat eyes, yellow pawpaw, rabbit teeth. And I said, no, I'm beautiful because Daddy says so. And every day my daddy would come to my room and say, oh, wake up, my dear. It's a sunny day. Look how beautiful you are. Go and get ready for school. And when I come home with my friends, he say, oh, when you were going out today, you were the most pretty of all your friends. And then one day he said, oh, you have the best set of legs in the world. Always wear your minis, but this is how you should sit down. Sit down appropriately. So all of those things built my confidence over time. And I had a very great friend in my father. And over time, growing up, that helped me to navigate the travails and challenges of life, even when I left the shores of Nigeria. So the question that came to me is, if I was that fortunate to have such a companion, why don't I put this in pen and paper and electronically, so that other people can benefit from the parenting strategies, from the camaraderie, and from that enhancing confidence building and self-esteem development that he gave to me? Why hoard what that man gave to me for free? And that's what led to me writing the book, My Father's Daughter. I also have another book, which is a novel. But My Father's Daughter, and that one is called Heartwebs, is also on Amazon. But My Father's Daughter is a book that many have given different names. Some have called it Parenting Manual, another they've called it a self-help book. And, it means different things to different people, how they see it. And I'll enjoin you to get a copy. So that's why I wrote the book. Let's share this knowledge. Let's not hoard it.
Yeah. And I mean, they do say that a daughter's relationship with her father really sets the pace for how she views herself in the world, the strength. Because, if we're going to add genders to, like, personality
Absolutely.
traits, you find that a lot of
Absolutely.
confident, strong women in this world was because they had parents or fathers who told them, like, don't let anyone take you for a fool in this world, because you're not. And so
Absolutely.
would you say that also had an impact on your platform, Loretta Reveals, and the inspiration behind that to motivate other people?
It did. My dad absolutely made me realize that there was nothing I could not achieve as a human being first by myself. It didn't matter whose daughter I am, whose wife I am, whose sister I am, who is my brother. It didn't matter. I didn't need to have any godfather or any godmother. He just made me realize that there was something great in me that I needed to nurture. There was a time my mother said, oh, this girl is always reading and studying and studying. She's not going to find anybody to marry her. And my father said, no, that is very secondary. I'm going to raise a woman who is going to first love herself, self-love, be motivated. And if she chooses that she's found a man whom she loves and she wants to cook and clean for that man every day of the week and twice on Sunday, then that is her choice. She doesn't do that because she seeks to be with a man. I don't know if you understand. Because what usually happens is that society stereotypes women. Society dictates to women. You see, women jump into relationships not having studied the man well, not having even established themselves, thinking that when they get married, a man will be responsible for their happiness, which is really wrong. You must discover yourself. You must love yourself. You must know and engage with who you are marrying. And you must be able to bring something to that relationship. You must be able to bring something to the table which you negotiate with. It doesn't have to be formal degree certificates. You can be empowered in hairdressing.
Yeah.
You can be empowered in shoemaking. You must be empowered. And we must all tell the girl child that she is fearfully and wonderfully made. But it also behoves us to raise the boy children who will be the future husbands of these girl children. Because if you don't raise your boy child well, we're going to soon be having problems when you raise girl children that are astronomically better human beings than male children. So at the same time, I tell women, raise the sort of boys you would want to marry. Because Elizabeth, there is no need raising a boy who does not value womanhood.
Yeah.
There's no need for you to raise your son and say his wife must die in the kitchen. That's all he knows. There's no use for you to raise a son who is scared of confident women. No, because I'm raising my daughter to be very confident. And at the same time, I'm raising my son and telling him that there is no harm in having this kind of confident women around you. They are harmless, actually, when you get to know them. They will set you on a path and a trajectory that other men will be jealous of. Okay, so my son understands that. And certain things in the homes, you know, like every day, there was a woman I met, she said, oh, I have 4 boys. My boys don't cook. I'm like, why? You cook and slave for them every day. Now tell me, when those kind of boys marry, what is their perception? And these are the kind of things my father made clear to me growing up. And these are the kind of things I have dealt with in this book as well. Don't get me wrong. I am not a man hater. In fact, many people know me. 90% of my friends are males. But at the same time, I do not do stereotypes. I don't do that, and I don't encourage it. Wow. And I know that most times society pushes people. Society makes those boxes that they want to fit us into. And I've been a very rebellious person all my life. You cannot put me in a box because I need to love myself. And if loving myself means being out of a box, I'm not willing to change that.
Wow. I love that. That's so powerful. And it's very true. Unfortunately, we don't have much more time to dive into that today on the show, but I would more than be welcome to have you back again to really dive into the stereotypes of gender roles, especially when it comes to our culture, especially for those in the diaspora who may not be living in Nigeria, but are brought up in that culture within the same mind frame of, you know, some of the traditional views of whose role is at home and whose role is at work and whose role it is to provide and so on and so forth.
I grew up in Nigeria, Elizabeth, and I got married in Nigeria, and I still had these values. So it had to do with the upbringing. It had to do with my father. It had to do with the content of that book, My Father's Daughter.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Loretta, and thank you so much for coming in and joining in this conversation today. I would just like to give you this opportunity to share how others can keep up with you and also purchase your book if they're looking to do that.
So we've got the book on Amazon across the world, everywhere. I'm on Facebook. It's Loretta Ogborooko. I'm on Instagram. Loretta MFD. MFD is my father's daughter. And also on Twitter at Loretta MFD. So all of these avenues are where you can reach me. In Nigeria, we have copies in the University of Benin, and we have outlets in Lagos, Terra Culture, and Glendora. We've got copies there as well.
Okay. Great stuff. Thank you so much again for joining us, and would love to have you back on the Chat Up Show sometime soon. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in London.
I'll try.
Trying to enjoy this confusing lockdown, not really lockdown situation that's happening around the world as well. I wish you all the best, and thank you again for joining us on the Chat Up Show today.
Ciao. Bye there.
Bye-bye. Now,
bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Now, that does conclude our show for today. Thank you all for tuning in, and it was so nice to chat it up with you today. As always, you know you can keep up with the GBKM network 24/7 at www.gbkm.fm or www.gbkm.tv. You can also watch the shows live on Facebook at GBKM Television and YouTube at GBKM TV, where you can also like, share, subscribe, comments to join in the conversation. You can also check out our sponsors, Coded Signature, as you know, for your own Queen Idia of Benin hat and your other Afrocentric apparel and accessories as well. You can check them out at Coded Signature, that's coded with a K.com, or on Facebook and Instagram at Coded Signature. And you can use the code GBKM at checkout for 10% off. Remember, they ship worldwide, so do not worry about location. And if you want to get that 10% off, again, that's GBKM at checkout. And as always, you can follow me, your host Elizabeth, on Instagram and Twitter at TIS_Liz_O, where I will continue to update you on the situation going on in Nigeria. But until then, I will chat with you at the same time, same place next week. Take care.
Do you know who you are? What is your name?
Sometimes you wonder why and wonder how. Don't be alone. Just stay calm, cause even if you choose or not to.
My child, recite the words of this ancient mythology. The wisdom I disperse in this verse, no apology. Memorize to keep you from evil theology. For you, the dark of hue, you're denied your equality. See, for generations we perpetrated psychology. Divide and conquer each other, really lynch policy. You cannot build each other up, how will you build economy?